Hi everybody, I'm Nathan Bray. I'll be having a look today at trading opportunities on the various cryptocurrencies. So we're going to go through the sort of 5 or 6 of these major ones and have a look at what they're doing at the moment, where they've been, and of course what trades we might be able to get into. Look, my background is as a technical analyst. I've traded commodity stocks and of course currencies, and so that's what I'm going to be looking at for today. I'll also have a look at some of the news events that have come out which could affect us over the next couple of weeks, and then most importantly I think I'm going to have a look at some of the alternative media types that I'm a big fan of, and have a look at what their thoughts are on cryptocurrencies and what the projections might be for the next coming sort of quarters or even to the end of the year. Alright, so let's jump in. I'm going to have, first of all, let's have a look at this Bitcoin versus the US dollar. I'm going to compare everything to the US dollar so that we have some sort of confluence going throughout this particular video, and we'll also because it's the new futures contract is denominated in US dollars. Alright, so let's have a look here. This Bitcoin using the Bitstamp exchange for the particular pricing on this particular one. Alright, so what can we see here? Well, Bitcoin is effectively, it's been in a really strong uptrend. I think everyone who's knows anything about cryptos, which remember I don't know a great deal, I'm purely looking at it from this technical point of view, and also having a look at the news that may affect it. So you can see what's going on here. Price has been moving up. We got a pullback, which isn't uncommon with Bitcoin, especially with the mania that it's been in. I mean, it's been really rising fast. And then we get a high top, lower bottom, higher top, then all of a sudden it comes down and we get these lower bottoms start to kick in. That's a fairly negative sign. So what does that mean? Well, we've got to be a bit careful now about where we might be buying in. The other thing that we've seen is we've got this high top, and then you can see down here we get this bit of a head and shoulders effect. That's the head, these are the shoulders. Classic example of an uptrend that might be stalled, or we might be going into what we might call a sideways pattern. Okay, potentially going into a downward trend. So this uptrend may be broken. So let's go and quickly check this out. So what I'm looking at here is I've drawn this black line to give an idea of the range that we could be in at the moment. So this range at the moment is around this 16 sort of 600 level, all the way down to I'm looking at this sort of 12, almost the 1200 psychological level there, where we saw a bounce recently. So what am I looking at? Well, I've seen price bounce. So the question for me now is, okay, we got this high top, lower top. Are we going to see another lower top and a retest of this 1200 level? Once it holds below there, I'm going to be saying it's a sell. Alright, at the moment I'm looking at it and I'm saying it's potentially moving into a sideways pattern, and we'll have a look at a moment at Cliff High, and he's the guy with all the bots that goes out and reads the internet. He's suggesting we could be in a sideways pattern until March, but we'll get into that in just a moment. So at the moment, do I want to be buying this Bitcoin against the US dollar? Personally, I wouldn't. Down here I do. If we get a bounce down here again around this 1200 level, I'm looking for potentially an accumulation opportunity. However, at the moment, if you are in it, I'd be very, very cautious about this sort of 16,637 level. Okay, is it going to fail there again? Is it going to potentially put in a lower top earlier than that? These are the things that I'm looking for with this Bitcoin against the US dollar. How is this current pattern different to what it's done before? Well, let's go back and have a look. Alright, we see situations where, and this is a really good example here, alright, back when it was around sort of $3,000, you saw a situation where it found resistance. You can see that there, where the buyers basically jumped out, the sellers came in and took some profit. Alright, so you can see here it tried to get up there again, it failed. We get this breakout event where it breaks through this sort of psychological, again a psychological $3,000 level, and then we see price obviously move higher, very similar to what we're seeing now, but comes all the way down to where this top becomes a bottom. Yeah, you can see that there, this top here becomes a bottom over here. That's continuing this upward trend. It provides an excellent accumulation opportunity to get into Bitcoin, and then of course it just continues higher from there. So that's the type of thing that potentially that I'm looking for a low risk, high opportunity trading, trading opportunity to get in and accumulate some more Bitcoin. All right, so if we move back to where it is now, at the moment, we're trying to see something similar in this respect. I'm looking for it to come back down and bounce off this level and continuing this uptrend. If it breaks through this bottom here, I honestly don't know what it's going to do. Therefore, I'm not going to be accumulating Bitcoin around that level. All right, so let's move on now and have a look. We're going to look at the three sort of major Bitcoins. So I'll have a look at Bitcoin Cash. Bitcoin Cash actually tells a similar type scenario. In that we're looking for, and remember we're looking at a chart here, it's very, very young, all right, so very hard to tell what's going on. But if you see here, if we could use a similar type scenario, you can see where I've got the crosshairs here at the moment. If we can look at this top becoming a bottom, and there's an accumulation opportunity there. Look, I may be gripping at straws here, but you can see a similar type of scenario. This top becomes a bottom, and then we start to move up again. So we're seeing that in Bitcoin Cash, even though it is very, very young, and that provided maybe an opportunity to buy around that 2,182 level. If we move down to Bitcoin Gold, Bitcoin Gold presents as something completely different. Bitcoin Gold, just have a look at it. It's a perfect example of range trading. I talked about how Bitcoin might be moving into this sort of range trading scenario. Have a look at this Bitcoin Gold. I mean, all these false breaks of this black line here, this is resistance. This is the point. Now, I don't want to use any tricky words. I've been told I use too many complicated words out of textbooks or something like that. But have a look at this. We've got this range where people just basically say at $420, it's too expensive. It's that simple. The buyers bail out, the sellers take profit, and down we come. All right, and then we find at the moment that we're in this range. Why? Because we have this scenario where price doesn't like to get down around this sort of $200 level. All right, so down here we had a recent scenario exactly the same as I was showing you on that Bitcoin against the US dollar. You can see here, here's down here is where I want to be a buyer. Okay, and I'm going to be really wary about getting some profit out or taking out profit and just using the profit that I've made, and getting out your capital and just using the profit that you've made somewhere up around this $400, $420 level. So this one's fairly straightforward, because the idea is even if you were to get in now, you could put a stop just below these spikes over here, down, and that would be your risk profile for a gain potentially up around that 420 level. All right, so keep an eye on that. If it does pop down there and hold again, that could provide an awesome accumulation opportunity. All right, let's move on to Ripple. I mean, Ripple has just been the opportunity of opportunities, really. I mean, this thing is flying. It was also, and let's just go back and have a look at you're almost looking at Bitcoin Gold here. All right, so you can see a similar scenario where it was accumulating for so long. Yeah, it was in this accumulation phase. Let me just try and move this down a little bit for you. You can see here it went through this stage where it was just going sideways, and couldn't break through this sort of 28-cent level or this 30-cent level. Had a lot of trouble, and then we finally got a breakout. The sellers stopped selling, the buyers started coming in, and it was in. And if you look down the bottom here, you'll see this is volume. This is the volume that's traded on a daily basis. So you can see across here volumes were reasonably low. When we got the breakout, of course, the volumes were obviously increasing and extremely high. Okay, so almost quadruple. And this sort of orange line just gives us an average. So the average started to rise as well in volumes, i.e. the amount of money going into this particular instrument, which is Ripple. And you see it's been moving up. It's been moving up, small pullbacks, moving up, comes down, tests that low there, okay, on this particular day. It just continued moving higher. So if I was owning Ripple, I'd be just letting this thing go. We had a correction on the holiday period, okay, where it was starting to go a little bit into a little bit of a mania, and at the moment it's just a big sell-off, and then of course we're seeing this go higher. I think this was a bit of a pump and dump. I spoke to a few friends about that, and it certainly did. It pumped up, and then profit taking took place. But at the moment this thing looks really, really strong, and I'd be just holding it. Stop wise, you can't even put a stop in on that. I mean, when I trade, I always put stops in. So I'd be putting in what I call a trailing stop loss. So I'd be looking at a percentage, maybe this particular day's high here, putting in a stop there and just letting it follow up over a period of time. If it was to come down and take out this particular day's close, okay, which is the top of that green area there, therefore I'd be saying, right, it might be worth putting, it might be worth taking out maybe half, taking out your capital and seeing what this thing's going to do. But at the moment, thumbs up, flying. All right, let's move across now to Ethereum. Now, Ethereum has had a previous high up around this sort of 867 level, and it tried to retest that the other day, and it's failed. All right, so what I'm looking for here, it's a similar type scenario, and I'm going to go and show you what sort of entry point am I looking for, and do I want to get in now? For all those people that are like, Ethereum's the bomb, I want to get into Ethereum, this is what I'm looking for. And I'm going to go back and use Ethereum to have a look for this particular pattern. All right, so you can see here, Ethereum runs up when it started, had a bit of trouble around the 400 level, sold off, okay? Then the next time it goes back over a period of time, it runs up, it breaks through that $400 level. All right, but the reason why this uptrend was really convincing is because this top where people weren't willing to pay actually becomes a bottom, okay? So this top here becomes a bottom over here. So price shot through that $400 level, comes back down, tests it, and that's where you want to accumulate. I think we're starting to see patterns here across the whole board that are telling us the same thing, and this is in its own instrument. So a lot of people say to me, oh Nathan, you don't know what you're talking about because you trade currencies and they're fiat and they're evil. They might be, all right, they might be, they probably are, and if the gold market's rigged, it probably is, all right. But what I'm looking for is consistent patterns where the participants in this particular market, which may very well be different to stocks and currencies and commodities, but we're looking for these participants in here to show some confluence that we can continue to use to look for trading opportunities. So as we saw here, top becomes bottom, goes back up again, creates a bit of a range, comes back down, that top becomes a bottom again. Great accumulation, that's the accumulation I'm looking for in my life. All right, that's the point where I want to accumulate. And of course, we get this breakout event, and it's huge. The sellers, they just pull their orders. They're like, I'm not selling here. The buyers are like, I've missed out, I've missed out twice at that accumulation point, and then that buying spree starts. And you can see down the bottom here, the volumes through this period are high considering for what it used to be, but you get this massive spike in volume. Who is it? Dunno. Not going to speculate. I'm not going to sit here and try and pretend it's because every kid in South Korea or whatever it was started to be able to do it on their phone, or because some government. I just don't know, all right? And when you say to yourself, I don't know, that's the smartest thing you can say when you're trading. When you pretend you know it's going to $100, I've heard this. I watched these guys the other day, right? They were sitting there betting on the horses, but watching their Ethereum and their Ripple on their phones, and they're telling me all these stories like, oh, it's because of this, it's because of that. I'm like, mate, did you go and speak to every single person placing an order? Do you have any idea what their intentions were? I mean, let's be honest. Let's just say we don't know and try and pick high probability areas with low risk to be able to get into these particular trades. That's what I do. I found it successful for me, and you can find what's successful for you. So therefore, with all that said, what am I looking for? I'm looking for a break above here. I'm not going to buy into this top. You can see where it's tried to get through and it's failed. All right, I'm not going to be buying into that top. So I want it to break through. I want it to come back down. I want this top to become a bottom. I want to see it reverse there. I use a certain trend line break, MACD cross on a 15-minute chart for that. But even if you just see it come back down and hold for the day and it starts to move up the next day, you might be saying, well, there's an opportunity to get into that particular trade. All right, so that's what I'm looking at there on Ethereum. You can see today it's not doing a great deal. It's still stuck underneath this level, which is around this sort of 870 level. All right, so that's my points of view on what I'm looking for in these sort of major Bitcoin and other crypto currencies. The other things I look for are major news events, what might be affecting the market. So if we have a look now, This is because I'm an Aussie. All right, this is what I've noticed today. Anyway, so there's a story that's come out of Zero Hedge, and basically it's telling us that Australian banks have reportedly frozen accounts of Bitcoin users. In other words, because it's deemed as anti-money laundering here in Australia, money's moving into Bitcoin exchange accounts. They can turn around and say, well, what's your source? They'll check your source of funds. Then they'll start saying, well, you could be an anti-money laundering person. I suppose this is sort of the legal logic to the our anti-money laundering laws. Or they'll just call everyone a terrorist. All right, it's the easiest way to be able to stop people putting money in there. Does this mean the banks are scared? Potentially. But if we move across again, I've got another story here out of Forbes. Okay, Forbes is basically looking at South Korea. South Korea has got a bit spooked. And why is this? Well, South Korea is the third largest denomination for putting money into cryptocurrencies. All right, so you've basically got Japan, you've got the US, and then of course you've got this South Korea, formerly China. The interesting thing about China was that it had the largest obviously denomination at one point. Then they sort of shut down the exchanges. So it went from 80% of the Chinese yuan moving money into cryptocurrency, then it dropped down to 5%. Now it's back up to 20. So even with all of these ways of trying to barriers to entry to stop people buying Bitcoin and cryptos, we've seen that actually start to increase again, which is a very good sign, I think, considering the number of people that are there. All right, and then as we move across again, we got this story, why is South Korea suddenly terrified of Bitcoin? All right, which again just goes into that idea of where the banks are starting to get a little bit spooked. Okay, and I think that's a fairly common denominator now right across the board. Is it going to stop Bitcoin? Well, at this stage it doesn't seem to be. We are seeing some profit taking, and that could also potentially explain, but this news events, they always come after the sell-off occurs, but this does make a lot of sense as to why that potentially could be occurring. They do ramble on with a bunch of reasons, but nothing there that that I can see as too concrete. The final thing I want to look at very quickly, some of these, there's basically these three alternative news people. They're called alternative news people, but and that's only by mainstream people, no doubt. But Karen Austin Fitz, she was a former Secretary of Housing in the US. She has the Solare report. I definitely recommend people read that. I love it. She's basically saying this whole Bitcoin thing is an op. So and all the cryptos are a bit of an op, what they call a psyop, okay, by governments and central banks around the world. She suggests that these cryptos are a way of popularizing the idea of digital currencies, which we're all moving into for the future. And also she suggests that it's a way of getting the brightest and the smartest people around the world to be involved in these Bitcoins, working 24/7, the smartest IT people, the smartest digital people, etc., all coming together to iron out all the bugs, okay, with Bitcoin and have it completely functional. Then they'll come in. Apparently she suggests they're going to crash these cryptocurrencies, and they're going to turn around and they're going to say, well, why don't we use this new Fed coin, or why don't we use this new Aussie dollar coin, or whatever it might be, US dollar coin. And then of course people will be like, oh, thank God, the savior, and then it will move on from there. This is the idea that goes on this premise that it's moving towards one world currency, and it'll be digital, and that's the way it'll move. Why? Because the current fiat currency, of course, is just every time you print one, it's debt. Okay, and it's not working out that well, and this could be the new move into this area. All right, another guy that I love is this Gerald Celente, bada bing, bada boop. He is constantly suggesting that no, this Bitcoin is a popularist movement. It's about getting away from the banks. People have had enough, and we're going to see these cryptocurrencies literally take over to a large degree. So his view really is look, there's going to be volatility, but these are effectively here to stay. The final one I want to have a look at is this Cliff High. All right, this Cliff High, he sends out all these web bots to read what's going on the internet and see how people's emotional value sort of connects to it. I'm giving you a really bad explanation. Go and check him out if you haven't seen him. But Cliff High suggests we're going to go in a sideways pattern, potentially till March, end of the first quarter, and then you'll see a big breakout potentially to around 40,000. So you're starting to see a few of these people start to say things that are kind of very similar. Catherine Austin Fitz, she suggests, look, it could go to, it could go up for years until they iron out all the bugs. So she's not saying it's going to crash tomorrow. She's saying, if all the bugs are ironed out tomorrow, then we could see a disaster on our hands. Gerald Celente suggests they're here to stay. So all of these are kind of at some point in agreement. And when I have a look at the charts, especially if I have a look at Bitcoin, the biggest one, okay, you are starting to see potentially this sideways pattern. What does that say to me? Well, it says to me I want to trade off I want to sell at the tops, I want to be accumulating at the bottoms. And I'll keep you updated. Thanks for your time. I look forward to speaking to you all again, and more importantly, I look forward to making some money trading these cryptos. Cheers, thanks for now.